It's been controversial over the course of Lamar Jackson's career, the amount of help he has gotten in terms of pass catchers. We talk about how the Ravens are moving in the right direction, but must keep going after they botched his rookie contract. All that and more coming up next on this episode of Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I am your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens, right here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. As always, thank you so much for being here and making us a part of your day and your first listen each and every day. Free and available on all podcasting platforms. So in video form, if you want to like and subscribe, if you enjoy watching our content, we have you covered over on YouTube. Also in audio form, if that's your preferred way of listening, Apple Podcast, Spotify, wherever you get your shows, we are there for you as well. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. We are back here with former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver and Super Bowl champion Qadry Ismail. Q, appreciate you joining me again. I know we're just kind of waiting for training camp. That's kind of been the theme ever since minicamp ended, day after day, getting closer and closer. Now just a couple weeks away.
It's a couple of weeks away, and I'm loving it. I'm loving the fact that it's here. Like the dead period of time kind of gets a little I don't know. You get anxious when you're a fan, but I think for a player perspective, it's you're in that zen. Like, oh, how's my year going to be? How's things going to turn out as far as my play time or what it is that I'm going to do and how successful I can be, and what are the challenges that I'm facing. A guy like a Keaton Mitchell, man, his trajectory, but had a bump in the road. How's that going to look? You got guys like a Ronnie Stanley. How's that all going to be as far as going into this year? His expectations. So this dry period of time, it's where you just sit back, you reflect, and you start to hone in on trying to be the best version of you can be.
Yeah, and we know training camp is huge, especially for these younger players, and the Ravens have plenty of them who are going to have to step up in bigger roles this year after losing so many quality free agents this offseason. But, Q, there's been a lot of controversy this week, and you know what? In the dead period of the offseason, we have to talk about this controversy because it surrounds a guy we've talked about a lot over the past couple of months, and that is Rashod Bateman. Now, there is some stuff with Lamar, too, not of Lamar's doing, obviously, just points about him. But Mark Schlereth had comments on Tuesday about the Ravens and them drafting first-round wide receivers, essentially saying he's tired of hearing Ravens fans complaining about Lamar doesn't have help, because he said, how many first-round wide receivers do you have to draft? And said all this stuff about the quarterback being responsible for developing these wide receiver talents. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Because the Ravens, they did not take the approach of a team like the Bills or the Cardinals or the Eagles when it comes to trading for a veteran wide receiver, which that would have been my preferred option when you talk about a rookie contract for a quarterback. But they did invest 3 first-round draft picks in 5 years. They have the tight ends. So it's not like Lamar has had absolutely bare cupboards in terms of talent there.
No, you're absolutely right. The statistics show that, yes, Eric DeCosta, he mentioned one of the things as a general manager is that he's stepping up to the plate and he's going to be throwing pitches as far as drafting guys and swinging at pitches, knowing that, he might miss, but he's still going to be swinging. So you can see where on both sides of it, if you're throwing it, okay, cool. Yeah, I want this guy. I'm going to go get him. At the same time, I'm swinging for it. I don't know. And so that is where you got to be bold, got to do your homework. I think the Ravens, from a organizational standpoint, with all their scouting department, they do a fine job of making sure that they don't turn over every stone. They don't do like a national scouting service. They have their own guys. They look for their own criteria, if you will, and you hope. After all that, you hope. And I think for Eric DeCosta, it is, okay, we feel like we've got the right guy for Lamar Jackson in this particular case, since he's your franchise quarterback. And from that development standpoint, we're kind of like right in the middle. I'd say we get like a C plus grade, but there's potential for upside and growth with this new crop of guys that Lamar has at his disposal.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about first of all, the comments about a quarterback being responsible for wide receiver development was, I talked with Cordell Woodland, and he ended up saying he hasn't heard it framed quite that way before. What we kind of talked about was a quarterback can elevate a wide receiver can elevate a quarterback. But to say that one position is completely responsible, or at least responsible in general, for the development of another, that seems unfair. Plus, if you want to go with the conversation that, Lamar, does he elevate guys? Yeah, he does. I mean, no disrespect, obviously, and I've talked about that, but he won the MVP with guys like Willie Snead and Seth Roberts, who, again, stepped up when they needed to, but they're not A.J. Brown. They're not DK Metcalf. They're not Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase. So I think Lamar, over the course of his career, has done more with less. Does that mean that the Ravens have done a perfect job of putting weapons around him? No, and I've been pretty vocal about that, saying that they should have done more during his rookie contract. But Lamar does do more with less, and we've seen that over the course of his career, in my opinion.
I'm going to say this. In this day and age of the NFL, it's the pass catcher, not the position. So when you say pass catcher, like, I look at the entirety of it. Yeah. And I include Isaiah Likely and I include Mark Andrews. So with that said, he's had a number one guy. His name just happens to be Mark Andrews. In the traditional minds of everybody, they realize he's a tight end. But that's just how it is. Lamar feels good chemistry with him, and off you go. And now Greg Roman could have easily changed some things up to have it be different. Didn't do it. He's a dominant run game type guy, and that's how he developed it. Lamar went out there, got his MVP, but also developed an amazing rapport with a great tight end. Last year, you see Isaiah Likely. Isaiah jumped up, boom, 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 and now all of a sudden he started making plays when Mark Andrews went down. From an outside receiver standpoint, this offense had at times shown strong capabilities with Hollywood Brown, but at the same time, you had a duel in Hayden Hurst and Mark Andrews. Now you have a duel in Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews. And so now you got Zay Flowers, a new coordinator, a quarterback coach that I think is trying to add in more options. And so that's where you have a Rashod Bateman come into play. I keep going back to Rashod Bateman when he was in his rookie year. My man produced. And when Lamar went down and they needed to make plays, man-to-man coverage, he produced. Snoop was throwing him the rock, and that was awesome. We've seen it when he is healthy. He is dominant. So you got two receivers that can do it. But at the same time, pass catchers. There's a whole group. Lamar Jackson has had a good group of pass catchers at his disposal. So you got to miss me with all the other nonsense, not you and I, but generally outside of this two-man conversation and all our listeners who might or might not agree with me. But I'm saying if you don't agree with me, I don't care. Why? Because pass catchers in this league, the way it's constituted, is way different than, say, gosh, even a few years back, as far as 10 seasons ago. It's way different now. It's a wide open game.
Right. And I wanted to clarify that, yes, when I was talking about doing more with less, I meant wide receivers particularly. But as a pass catcher whole, yes, you are completely correct. Tight ends are a big part of that. When we talk about Patrick Mahomes, who has been one of his biggest weapons over the course of his career, his biggest pass-catching weapons, Travis Kelce, talk about George Kittle and his role in the San Francisco offense. Obviously, Mark Andrews, yes, pass catchers does involve everybody. You can even talk about running backs now is pass catchers and guys who have that specific role. So Lamar has, the Ravens, again, invested 3 draft picks in 5 years first-round draft picks in 5 years in wide receivers, but you can't discount the tight end position as well. But in terms of veteran guys who they have brought in, They haven't gone that route of bringing in a number one wide receiver. Now, I think in terms of what Baltimore did versus what they're doing now, it's just different, right, Q? I mean, Lamar's on a huge contract now. The rookie contract situation has sailed. I think last year under Todd Monken, Steve Young ended up saying this on Kevin Clark's show. He said that it was a transitional year for the offense a bit in terms of getting away from the full Greg Roman offensive things and trying to become more balanced. With that, in terms of personnel, I think they are getting there in terms of getting the skill set that they need. They brought in a guy like Tez Walker in the draft who can be that bigger body, deep threat player. They brought in multiple undrafted guys. One that I know you are very familiar with is a pass catcher that can get up there, can use his big body. So they acquired that type of skill set where in the past felt like they were very honed in on one or two specific types of wide receivers only. Does that mean I think they should have, does that mean their offseason has been perfect? No, I think a veteran wide receiver could have helped here or there. I don't think it would have hurt them if they had brought in somebody else, a vet. I've talked about that. But I think compared to where they were in the Greg Roman era, I think they are at least getting better at identifying what they need for Lamar from a pass-catching perspective than they were in that Roman era. And I think that at least is a start, even if they still have a way to go.
See, and here's the thing, too. Like, the Greg Roman era compared to Todd Monken era, like, it's now, hey, Lamar, you got multiple plays to go to the line of scrimmage with. We're telling you, like, based upon film study, the whole 9 yards, this is what you're going to do. You're going to do away with one play and keep on another play. If you keep on another play, you're going to go out there. It's your responsibility. Let's make it work. Let's make it happen. I think with Greg Roman's, it was more along the lines of that, but it was run-based. What we have now is more pass-based with the strong, obviously, option to utilize the skill sets of Derrick Henry, of Justice Hill, of Keaton Mitchell when he gets back. And yes, number 8, when 8 feels like it. I would rather have him feel like it rather than have to do it. Does that make sense? Like, you got more to work with, and you're in the second year of a broader attacking offense. Let's see it. You and I are going to sit here next year. We're going to be on our podcast, and we're going to be like, yo, it worked. It was amazing. Wow, they hoisted up the Lombardi. Or they were so close, and there were times where Lamar threw in the coverage, or, man, the receiver didn't step up and make the play, or the injury bug. So we have one story we're going to tell, or we're going to tell the other story. My goodness, Lamar was just slinging it. And just the way in which he extended the play on that one particular drive, or against Pittsburgh, he's traditionally had struggled. But gosh, it was amazing how they took away Mark Andrews, and Isaiah was getting fed the ball. But then all of a sudden you saw Derrick Henry, rattle off that 60-yard run. They come in with these funky groupings with 3 tight ends, and now all of a sudden you see number 83 catching the ball in the back of the end zone. Yeah. But at the same time, what I'm saying is that there is the option of being flexible, which you didn't have in prior years.
Yeah, we know this is a run-first team. We know they're going to continue to be a run-first team, but the difference is being a balanced run-first team, where that is your identity and that is fine, but to have that other option like you just talked about, I think is really, really key. Coming up in the second part of the show, though, we'll talk a bit more about the wide receiver position and Rashod Bateman and just where they are right now as a whole with that group. It has been the hot topic this week. We'll continue to talk about that, all that and more coming up next year on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Gametime. Going to MLB games has been a huge part of my life, and I love going to games during the summer. For me, my dad and I, we made a ton of memories when I was younger going to games, and still even today, and I'm looking forward to again continuing to make those memories. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With the last-minute deals, all-in prices, view from receipt, and the lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. And on the Gametime app, obviously, for upcoming Orioles games, Gametime is a place to be. Plus, for football, Ravens coming up here in a couple of months, Gametime has it covered for those as well. The Gametime app is great, and one of my favorite features includes last-minute deals. You can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. Plus, the app itself is really easy to use in general. And some other features include flash deals, zone deals, all-in pricing, seat views, lowest price guarantee, game time ticket coverage, and so much more. Take the guesswork out of buying FB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off first purchase. Tell us to buy game, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, spell LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today, last minute tickets, lowest price guarantee. We're back our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher and Qadry Ismail still talking with you here. And Q, I know we've talked so many different ways about Rashod Bateman this offseason. He's been a big topic of conversation. I know we are both Rashod Bateman believers and what he can do. Obviously, it comes down to staying healthy and getting on the field and getting chemistry with Lamar Jackson. Now, there was a clip that surfaced earlier in the week of Lamar Jackson down working with wide receivers. Nelson Aguilar was there. I believe Tez Walker was there as well. Now, someone who was not spotted in those clips was Rashod Bateman. Lamar ended up saying he wanted to get working with his wide receivers and get those guys going, which here he is doing that. We got the clips. But there's all this conversation now about, oh, Bateman's not there. Bateman's not there. Well, he should be there. He should. And this, it brings me back to voluntary OTAs in a way where it's like, we had the conversation, you and I, with Lamar, and it was, would it be great if he was there? Yeah. Would you prefer him to be there? Yeah. But, you can't force him. This is his off time. He can do what he wants with there. The connection we know between those two, I think any work would be beneficial. But again, is it the difference between winning or losing a Super Bowl? I'm not so sure about that one, but it'd help if he was there. But I'm not going to sit here and just chastise him because he's not.
I think when you look at the offseason, it is time to develop a chemistry. It's time to develop a bonding. It's time to develop that sixth sense that helps, guys do what they need to do. And that's when it comes to December and January. I think, you have a relationship with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce where, they're opening up restaurants together. They're, seeing at, Dallas Mavericks basketball games. They're doing commercials together. That chemistry had to be successful or there wouldn't have been anything. Tom Brady, my God, man, he's flying his dudes out and making sure that they're on the same page with him. I know Lamar is Lamar, and guys are going to do what guys are going to do. I think that, yes, it would have been great for him to be there, to be honest. However, when you look at the grand scheme of things, if they're getting in work and they're feeling like their chemistry is solid, I have no problem with him just saying, look, I'm going to do what I do. And when it's time for the season to come about, I'm going to be ready. My dudes are going to be ready. Let's go.
Yeah, and I think that, there is something to say about, well, this is not a conversation point where Bateman already has the chemistry with Lamar and he can, just say, okay, well, I'm going to work out on my own because the chemistry is there. If there was a time to do it, I think it would be now because of the fact that you're trying to get that chemistry. Plus, this is a pretty big year, maybe not in terms of long-term stability because Bateman did just sign an extension. But what happens if it kind of goes the way it does? It has gone this year, Q. If it's kind of he can't stay healthy or the chemistry's not there and he's under contract for a couple more years. I mean, I think at that point, the Ravens have to say, yeah, we'll keep you on the roster, but we're going to have to bring in other guys. Or it's just a change of scenery. Maybe it's just both sides have to move on. So, again, I think any work is good work. I think, again, like you said, it would be great to have him there and get that working with Lamar, but it's his decision and it's not required he's there. So once training camp comes around, if he is not there, that's a different issue. I mean, there's no reason to think he wouldn't be. I think everybody shows up to training camp once it starts, but that's a different point of conversation. But it's interesting because if Bateman starts slow, Q, I think there's going to be this whole conversation about, okay, this we knew, all the people who doubted it were going to say, we knew this was what's going to happen. It's happening right now before our eyes. But there is the conversation of who is the actual number two in this offense right now, because I think everybody kind of automatically points to Bateman, but Nelson Aguilar played really well for them last season. It seems like he and Lamar have a ton more chemistry, at least at this point, than Lamar and Bateman do. Do you see maybe Nelson Aguilar taking over that number two spot sneakily from Rashod Bateman to start the season? Is that kind of a hot take, or do you think that's more reality than we think?
I mean, that's just a hot take, and I just don't see – like, I see that chemistry and all that, but Bate is different. And I love me some Nelson. He's a great, veteran presence and the whole 9 yards. And he's made plays. Don't get me wrong. And he's looked good in training camp. But, Rashod Bateman is healthy. Like, okay. I don't see why he's not receiver 1A. I guess just because I've seen the OTAs, I've seen when he's out there and what he looks like. Like, I think, yes, no question about it. Nelly can flat out fly. He's fast and can smoke it down the field. And he might be older, but he's faster than Tez Walker. At the same time, the fact that you're looking at Bate where he's got a good enough top end speed, bro. Let's go back to that Miami game. Took that slant route, took it to the hizzy. But at the same time, what I'm saying is that him healthy and him not worrying and just playing, sit back and let's enjoy the show. Like I guess I'm not a speculative, glass half empty type of analyst. I'm looking at what I'm seeing, and what I'm seeing gives me the confidence to say glass half full, he's going to be okay.
And I think the other part of trusting Bain, we talked about this, you and IQ, about it. Seems like Baltimore's going all in on trusting him this season, giving him the bigger role, not bringing in competition. I think part of that is because, and you can honestly, this conversation can expand to all their positions. They have a lot of young guys. They want to see what they can do. Now, there's a very delicate balance between seeing what a young guy can do and competing for a Super Bowl. You have to have a lot of guys step up, and Baltimore has kind of had this offseason of replacement plans, is what I've been calling it, where you're going to have young guys stepping into a veteran role on a bunch of different positions. But for Bateman, as we have talked about, it was difficult to differentiate who was the 2 and the 3 last year. And I know in the grand scheme of things, like, the starting position in the league, if you're not a quarterback or an offensive line, doesn't really matter all that much because you're still getting snaps. But to me, it kind of feels like it was Beckham one week, then it was Bateman another week. We just never really knew. It feels like now Bateman doesn't have to look over his shoulder. To me, I think he is that number 2 guy. And I think the belief could go a long way here, but it starts with him staying healthy. It starts with him establishing chemistry with Lamar Jackson, and that is the really important thing here. But coming up in the final part of the show, we'll talk about Patrick Ricard a little bit, someone who hasn't really gotten a lot of love this offseason, but you know what? He's going to have a role in this offense this season. We'll talk about what it could be and more coming up next year on Locked On Ravens. We are back on final segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher and Qadry Ismail still chopping it up here. Really appreciate everybody for tuning in, making us a part of your day. Be sure to like and subscribe in video form and audio form. Patrick Ricard, the position of fullback in general it's dying out across the league. We really don't see a bunch of teams have that traditional fullback nearly as much as we used to. Maybe, when you were playing and everything, you had a bunch of guys during when you played. Fullback was thriving. And now it's kind of, you see like 8 to 12 teams who still use it on a full-time or even part-time basis. But the Ravens have found a role for Patrick Ricard. He can line up in line as a tight end. He can be in the backfield. We saw some Greg Roman times when he was lining up in the slot, although I think we're past that at this point. But he's a versatile guy. And there was a lot of, I think, honestly, pessimism last offseason in terms of just if he could even factor into the offense. And we saw him play a pretty big role, I think mainly because Todd Monken is very good at adapting to his personnel. It's year 2 of Todd Monken's offense. Both John Harbaugh and Tom Monken have talked about, again, how you find a role for a guy like that, regardless of if it is not very defined at this point in the offseason. Are you expecting another big year of Patrick Ricard, or could some of those snaps maybe go to Isaiah Likely or Charlie Kolar when you think about it?
Honestly, Pancake Pat is going to be around, and he is going to be that guy for that F position, which is kind of that fullback / slot / it could be Isaiah Likely, it could be, Pancake Pat. It could be Mark Andrews. The thing is, it could be Charlie Kolar. For him, you can't put him in a box. And number one, like, I know he's a big man, but my God, he is a large man. When he's walking next to some of them dudes, you're like, oh. And I think for both him and Derrick Henry, I mean, they might have a position, call it big heavy. just because both of them in there at the same time. You going to score a touchdown with big, heavy personnel package in there. Now, at the same time, if Lamar decides to do a waggle action, which is, show the fake, go out and do some form of a run, and it is a pass action as well, Pancake Pat's going to be catching the ball. And he's a good run after catch guy. It's just another option. And I am like, wow, fascinated by the way he went to offensive line last year. Then they were like, let's just put him back. They put him back, and dude just like flourished. Who was the guy that was supposed to replace him? Was it Ben Mason or something? Or
Ricard, yeah, Ben Mason.
Oh, my God. Well, they got rid of Ben Mason. Ben Mason was like an afterthought after Pancake Pat was like, nah, homeboy, I'm back. What's up? They put me on offensive line, kind of showed them what I was as far as just dominating, but I'm so athletic that they just couldn't keep me on the offensive line. So then I just went back to playing that F position and fullback / wide receiver / tight end / Pancake Pat. I just think that he's that versatile. Yeah, Todd Monk's going to find ways to maybe not feature him, but have a small package where he can kind of be in there and be extremely productive.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to be saying feed Patrick Ricard or anything like that. I think that might be taking it a little too far. But he's a valuable player, and he's honestly a super unique one, too. I mean, obviously, we know the story with him. Started off on the defensive line, coming out of college, was that two-way player for a while, then moved over to offense full-time. But I love, that heavy stuff you were talking about there, because it really feels like the Ravens can utilize that. Because just imagine that. I mean, Patrick Ricard, large human, like you said. Derrick Henry, large human. You have to go. Imagine a guy trying to shed Ricard, which again is almost impossible in its own right. And then he finally does it one of these times, and you have Derrick Henry staring you flat in the face. you gotta get him too. That's just it's gonna be tiring. I mean, you talk about how the Ravens, they love to grind it out with some of these games. While we hope that they're gonna be a more balanced offense this season, they're not gonna shy away from their identity. And you bring in those guys, you bring in your heavier personnel. And I think some of the good stuff you mentioned with that versatility of Ricard is you can line up guys in the heavy personnel, and then you can use play action and still have Ricard be a part of the play, whether it is throwing to him in the flat or using some of those actions you were talking about. That, to me, makes his role this year so intriguing and enticing.
Think about it. Goal line, 5-yard line, 2-point play. I got Patrick Ricard, Derrick Henry. I got Isaiah Likely. I got Mark Andrews. I'm scoring. Did we stutter? I'm scoring. That's it. Like, I don't need to worry. We're scoring. Why? Because you can't stop us. If you think you can stop us, we're going to run it down your throat. Boom. Lead fullback. Bam. Derrick Henry does Derrick Henry type stuff. If you think you got it figured out, and yeah, you got a good defensive front, that's okay. We'll outmaneuver your good defensive front, outmaneuver your amazing linebackers, and then we're going to get to the edge. Oh, yeah, did I say there's nobody really can stop Mark Andrews? Oh, you doubled him. Oh, that's what you did. Athletic man and Isaiah Likely catching a touchdown. Man, did I forget the number one threat, number 8? Like, just in case he gets bored and says, I just want to put up another stat, he's going to be running it in. I'm so tired of this scoring. I don't know what to do. That's what it's going to be like when you're talking about that big, heavy personnel package.
And imagine, again, you run it from the 1-yard line 3 times. Imagine this 1st and goal from the 1. Can you imagine? I mean, if you're a defense, you have to figure out, are they going to just try to pound this thing in? Are they going to run a play with Lamar, toss in? Plus, if you remember, and I know this is kind of a bad memory for Ravens fans, but Derrick Henry at the goal line in that 2019 divisional game, throwing the touchdown at the goal line, we know we can do that too. So it's all these different options. If you're a defense, you have to account for so much, which is why, again, when I say go back to 2019, I'm not saying 2019 was a year ago. It's not. It is far, far, far in the past. But something that made that offense so successful was using, whether it was their 3 tight end sets or heavy personnel in general, working their play action off of that, making teams fear that and having it work, and then just say, okay, if you're scared of us doing that, we're just going to run the ball down your throat. You can't do anything to stop us because you can't load the box up on us because you don't know what we're going to do. And now you have Derrick Henry, who is no disrespect to Gus Edwards, obviously, no disrespect to any of the running backs Baltimore has had, but Derrick Henry is just a different beast. So to me, that's what makes this whole thing so intriguing. And with Patrick Ricard, yeah, there are going to be times where he's not on the field. Going to be times where you don't use him in favor of other guys, but that doesn't mean he can't have an impact this season.
I think the versatility puts pressure on the defense. I think versatility gives you a little bit more calm on offense. And honestly, I think it's pretty much Lamar Jackson saying that I feel comfortable, doing whatever I want to do because he's going to have the autonomy at the line of scrimmage to call the different personnel packages. But again, even in that, there are going to be times where, defenses are going to have a better advantage. But what happens if you got Justice Hill or Keith Mitchell in the game? And what happens if, you take out Pancake Pat and you put in, 3 wide receivers, or you can have 3 tight ends in a game and Patrick Ricard not be one of them and still have an advantage and spread out guys and still be physical at the point of attack and yet, throwing darts and lasers. I think, again, health is going to be the number one premium coming out of training camp. But the second one is the confidence of knowing that everyone is on the same page with the different personnel groupings and really showing that we're ready to show the league on that primetime stage against who out there in Kansas City. If we say, when they do their national anthem and the home of before it's Brave, you hear this extremely thunderous bass of fans say, Chiefs. And it's like, what in the world? Yeah. Well, some of the young guys might be like, what in the world? But everybody else is going to be like, yeah, game on. Let's go.
Yeah, know what time it is. And the Ravens have so many options with their offense this season. Obviously, health, as you said, Q, is the key there. But if it does work out that way, there's a lot of potential with that group in general. But that's all I have for you, Q. Thanks so much for hopping on. Tell people where they can find you, what you're working on here. Just, again, a couple weeks away from training camp.
Yeah, a couple of weeks away. I know the big thing is that we are on WJZ for all of the purple shows. At the same time, I, Qadry Ismail, do missile training, and you can go to missiletraining.com. Missiletraining.com is where it's at. Missiletraining.com is where you can interact with me as far as all your sports performance and human movement training. At the same time, it's all about Locked On Ravens. My guy, me, Kevin Allstriker, and I chilling, talking Ravens football. Yes, Rookies Report the 13th. And from there, we're just going to be locked on Ravens all year long.
That's exactly what it is. Links to Q's work in the description down below. You know where to find them. Be sure to check them out and show them support. Q, thanks again. And that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe, follow along, video form, audio form. We'll be right back here tomorrow with more Ravens content. So stay tuned. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.